Hello, welcome back to Football 301. I'm your host, Nate Tice. Very fun episode today. We're going to jump into a Week 11 preview with my guy, Charles McDonald, and then going to do a big board off with Dane Brugler from The Athletic, my old coworker who just dropped his big board. It's the top 50. I have a top 50. We're going to compare top 50s. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we do that, I'm not forgetting that we have a slate of NFL games this weekend, and the draft is in 6 months. So I'm not just dropping Week 11 and just putting it by the wayside. Like I said before, to help me preview the games, we're going to do one thing on 5 games. My guy, Charles McDonald, how you doing today, Mr. Verts?
I'm doing good. It's funny because when we got the plan for this podcast, I was like, oh, this must be just a crappy week of games. And then I started thumbing through it yesterday, and I was like, oh wait, no, there's some heavy hitters. So yeah. I'm glad that we get to just kind of zoom through it, so that people have less things to get mad at us for if we speak less. Yeah.
Right. Like when you don't get an injury or you don't know about an injury because practices on Thursday haven't happened, please don't get mad at us that Taylor Decker was not playing. Wasn't on the injury report until that point. But anyways, yeah, like you said, we're going to zoom through this rather than do a big, like you said, there's a bunch of juicy matchups, so it's kind of hard to parse it. So what we're going to do, we picked 5 and we're going to just do our kind of a one thing like we do typically at the end of the podcast, but we're going to do it for these 5 games. Let's go with the Haas fight. This is a staple, I think, of our generation is this game. And it's always a night game. It always feels like too, but Ravens, Steelers, definitely the Haas fight. Charles, watching this, slugfest, what is the one thing that you are checking out for it?
I like that we didn't even talk about what the Haas fight was, and like this is just the obvious choice for it. I love these games. Like I grew up, went to high school outside Baltimore. I have been to honestly more Ravens games and Falcons games in my life, and I was at the game where Mike Tomlin may or may not have walked onto the field to trip.
Oh, you were?
To trip the late Jacoby Jones. I was in the nosebleed seats where all the rabid fans are. And I was concerned for Mike Tomlin's safety, like making it out of that stadium after that play happened. So this is still one of the premier rivalries in the league, and I think it's about to get his juice back because it was dormant for a little bit towards the end of the Flacco run, but we're back. I think the interesting thing here is as long as Lamar Jackson has been a Raven, this is only his 5th game against the Steelers because they had the weird game that they played on Wednesday one year, and he was either out or sick with COVID. Then there was one year where it was late in the season and they already had a playoff seed locked up, so he didn't play. So he hasn't had too much exposure against the Steelers, but the numbers would suggest that this is like his kryptonite team, just based on past performances against the Steelers. But I think that they have a chance to buck the trend this week. If you go back and you watch that game that they played in Pittsburgh last year, Lamar was awesome in that game. The stats do not tell the whole story. They legitimately dropped 3 or 4 touchdowns that were perfectly placed. So it's not like he can't perform against his team. It's just, sometimes in rivalry games, weird things happen. But as far as just on the field, I want to see if the Ravens can stay out of 3rd and long, because I remember last year, that was some of the areas where they got gotten, especially at the end of the game when TJ Watt just gets to pin his ears back and close the game with a strip sack like he does. It feels like 8 times a year. But it's like the one split that the Ravens aren't great at this year, which is kind of interesting. It's like the average distance to a first down on 3rd down, the 24th in the league, which is interesting when you think about how well they run the ball.
Game is, and that's right. Interesting. Maybe because they're explosive and so maybe efficient. Maybe, that's interesting.
And I mean, it's kind of interesting because when you start actually looking at what separates let's say the ranked one,
it's like a yard,
5.
right?
It's not even a full yard most of the time. But still, they're 24th in that category. So I would be a little bit worried about getting into spots where the Steelers can pin their ears back. But also at the same time, I'm not so worried that I would expect them to lose this game. I think the fight up front is going to be a whole lot of fun. The Steelers have several hosses on their defensive line, and we know how good the Ravens running game has been this year. So really just how good are you on 3rd and long? Because I think those areas in the margin and some of those high leverage plays are where this game is going to be made.
Yeah, that side of the ball is beef on beef. It's a good one on that one. And the Steelers actually have the physicality to match the Patrick Ricard, Derrick Henry looks like they actually will take it to him. So no, I think that's a great point with the third and long stuff. Also, too, I will flip on to the other side of the ball, which is good because this is a kind of a quasi house fight as well. The Ravens' run defense is phenomenal. Well, their pass defense gives up a ton of explosives, but their run defense makes it a slog. That's where they can come downhill where Simpson's playing well. Just also their defensive linemen can create some explosives for defense as far as TFLs, like Matt BK and the others up there, our co-worker Kyle Van Noy. And also like they're smart on defense as far as like just understanding where the bodies have to be, putting the numbers there. Again, they give up explosive passes, but again, what are the Steelers going to do on offense? They're going to pound the freaking rock. And that's looked better. Our guy, Zach Frazier, the center, looks amazing. That game last week, he looked so good. He's so smart. He's so good. Mason McCormick, the right guard, another rookie, looked good. Isaac Samulo, the left guard, looks good. So they got some, they're improving because of health. These young guys kind of getting more reps. Najee Harris is going to get touches. Jalen Warren's going to get touches. This is the formula for the Steelers. They're going to pound the rock, get into strike range, and let Russ throw a moon ball. And then you hope that you hit on 2 or 3 of those. Even if you go 40-60 on that, you throw 8 of them and hit 3 of them, that's all you need. Like that, I mean, just look at what happened last week. He hit 2. That's all they needed. Like I think maybe 3, but that's all this offense needs. It's not going to be a nickel and dime pass game. That's not the design. That's not how Russell Wilson plays, and that's not what Arthur Smith even prefers. So, it's an interesting kind of formula. It's strength on strength in the run games, but then, the Steelers' pass game is volatile, but you're going against a volatile pass defense. So
to be kind. Right.
Yeah. I'm being nice. I'm being nice.
Volatile would suggest they're good sometimes,
I know, right? I know. I actually, when I said that, I was like, I don't know. Wonky, not even boom bust because there's no booms. It's just a lot of bust.
Just a lot of bad, yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna. I really think it's gonna come down to how those 8 deep shots work out. Like that. That's how that feels on that side of the ball. But I'm excited to watch it. Good house fight. The Ravens are 3-point favorites at Pittsburgh. Do you have a prediction for this one?
I think the Ravens win this one. I think Lamar has another nice game against them, and this time the receivers catch their passes and they get across the finish line. But it's gonna be a slugfest for sure.
Yeah,
this is that's how I look at Steelers. Yeah,
I think it's a Ravens win, Steelers cover type of game. Like I think this is not even a 1-score game. I think this is a field goal or under game. But like you said, division game. Tomlin's going to get his guys rolling. This is a really fun one. Excited to check it out. All right, moving on to another AFC brouhaha. We have the Chiefs and the Bills, and these feel like they're always classics. When you're watching Chiefs Bills, Charles, I should give the spread too, just for in case you're into that. The Bills are 2-point favorites at home, so almost an even game here. When you're watching this game, Charles, what are you checking out?
I feel like this is just another game where the Chiefs can you're going to be nickel and diming and win it within the margins. I defaulted to 3rd and long conversions or third down stats for this game because
you're becoming a coach.
I know. I'm getting back to my roots a little bit. The more with every episode I do of this podcast.
All right, so low red zone, they do this.
No, but that's how I started, like breaking it down a little bit before we start doing this game. I know, just we'll never be cure of the sickness. But the Chiefs are 1st and 3rd and long conversions. Like Mahomes has just been awesome there. The Bills are 28th in 3rd and long defense.
Interesting.
Which is pretty interesting. I think maybe that's where you start to see some of the retooling that they've done this offseason, not always being up to like the full standard that they've had over the past couple of years. And I think that's kind of where the Chiefs can get them. Just, in the margins. 3rd down, if they can get to the red zone, trying to score there and improve their rate there. But really just the plays, like the high leverage plays where Mahomes has to be Mahomes, Josh Allen has to be Josh Allen. Because I kind of think these teams are fairly evenly matched going into this game. But you have just 2 superhuman quarterbacks that are really capable of just putting the entire load on their own shoulders and carrying it across. The other thing that I found interesting, as good as the Bills and Chiefs defense have been on, over throughout the course of the season, the Bills are 24th in dropback success rate. The Chiefs are 25th in dropback success rate on defense. So Could be a potential for some fireworks here. Yeah. Either peppering from Mahomes' side and probably fireworks on Josh Allen's side.
Yeah, this game was, I almost wish we did the deep dive, so I'm going to just use this excuse to kind of do it. Our show, we can do what we want. Mahomes against cover 2. The Bills are really leaning into cover 2, and that fascinates me. They had the natural answer, which is a boring run game, which is going to work. That's what you do against cover 2. Run. And they can do that. And it's not going to get explosives, but they're going to be efficient. They're still a very efficient offense. But this is going to be a big Teron Johnson game, the slot player for the Bills, who's phenomenal. The Chiefs will trot out tight ends. The Bills will do, no matter what, they're going to match with nickel with 5 DBs. Johnson is a big part of that. Mahomes has been sacked 5 times this year, almost a 10% rate against cover 2. He has a good success rate. It's above 50%. His air yards per completion against cover 2 this year is 2.8 yards. I'm going to repeat that. His air yards per completion against cover 2 is 2.8 yards. And then I stripped away and I was like, all right, I'm going to take out, because they throw some screens against cover 2. All right, I'm going to take that out. Nope. Still 5th lowest air yards per attempt, even if you just take out all the other routes. And even when you include those other routes and take out the screens, Mahomes is 31 of 40, 58% success rate, nickel and dime fest on this side of the ball. This is going to be, I think, a Juju Smith-Schuster, if he's fully healthy, game, a Travis Kelce game. I think that this team, this defense, it can be susceptible to that stuff, the peppering over the middle in the run game. So if you're looking for fireworks from the Chiefs as far as big plays, I don't know. I think it's going to be a Ichiro type attack. A lot of singles and doubles from the Chiefs side. Also, the Bills are out. So on the other side, Bills are out. Dalton Kincaid did not practice. Amari Cooper limited practice. Keon Coleman's out. Spencer Brown did not practice as well. And that's kind of, I want to know the health of Kincaid and Cooper, especially because the Chiefs have a really good defense. They're really good against the run. They do not allow explosive plays. They give up the fewest explosive plays in the NFL, but they are bad against tight end and slot targets because they do all the spag stuff, and then you got freaking George Karlaftis trying to run with a tight end 20 yards down the field. The Chiefs have allowed 77 yards a game to tight ends, 32nd in the league, 64% success rate, 28th in the league allowed. To slot, 92 yards a game, 0.6, 29th in the NFL, 62% success rate allowed to slot targets, 32nd in the NFL. That little middle area of the field should be a prime Kincaid game. So get your butt out there. Like, he's got to play. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a huge game and opportunity for him. So gonna be checking that out. Like, they don't give a lot of explosives, and it's a good defense, but there are start spots that Josh Allen can kind of do his thing at. So I'm excited for this one too. This is they always kind of have, when you have these two juggernauts kind of going against each other every year, the new layers they all add is a lot of fun. So predictions, like I said, Bills are 2-point favorites at home, 45.5 point over under, by the way.
Man, I saw the witchcraft the Chiefs pulled in the last play on Sunday. I'm not picking against them, Chiefs.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll do Bills just for fun, just so we're on the other sides. I'll go Bills win by field goal. This is going to be a doozy. The average tickets, because it's on the website right now, the lowest ticket price of this Bills game is $234. Lowest price for the Steelers game is $255. Most expensive ones. So that's how we should just pick games. What's the average ticket price?
Well, we'll end up with a bunch of Giants and Jets games. I don't know if we should do that. True.
It won't be Falcons and Titans games. I can tell you that. Or actually, the Jets tickets this week are $29 lowest. Okay. So maybe. All right. Now we're going to go to, we're going to fire through the rest of these. So we got Bengals, Chargers, kind of almost a loser leaves town kind of match. I don't know. The Chargers kind of have stacked some wins, but maybe for how I feel about these teams is maybe more than anything. Watching this game, though, Bengals, Chargers. Chargers are 1.5 point favorites at home. Sunday Night Football in LA. What are you checking out in it?
What we talked about before. This is going to be one of the first real deal offenses that the Chargers have seen in terms of just top tier talent, even without T. Higgins, who I think Jeremy Fowler reported he's probably going to be out for the rest of the year. Today.
So, that contract's not signed, so I'm not surprised.
I wouldn't step foot on that field either. Jamar Chase is braver than me.
Higgins can get $30 million in 6 months. Unless he gets tagged in, but
Yeah, just wait it out. But even without him, like they've still been able to rip off big plays. Burrow and Chase are kind of playing absolutely out of their minds right now, and it's not just the the 2 games against the Ravens. Like those guys have really been clicking over since their slow start at the start of the season. I wrote down, is this a hashtag Cruton Rankins game like you'll see in college where you'll see like some
blue chip ratio?
Yeah, a blue chip ratio game where here's 12-0 and I'm foreshadowing. Here's 12-0 Indiana versus 10-2 Ohio State. Oh no, it's 41-13 Ohio State. By the end of the game. I don't think it's going to be that extreme, but I do think just in terms of like where are our best players, that could be an edge for the Bengals. But the Chargers defense has been so well coached. The offense, they probably should have a lot of success against the Bengals defense, especially with how they want to play. So this is kind of like a fun styles make fights game, but I think I'm going to roll with the Bengals. I think it's a big game for Chase.
Yeah, that's kind of what I looked at too. And it's Joe Burrow versus Jesse Minter, the defense coordinator for the Chargers. Like that's what you're checking out in this game. And Justin Herbert highlights. So 2 awesome quarterbacks playing, both of them playing like top 5 MVP candidates right now, maybe even top 4 when you parse it. But like you mentioned, Chargers defense, they face the 32nd ranked schedule by DVOA, 32nd meaning the easiest. They're on non-adjusted stats, they're top 3 in everything you look at. But like you said, this is just a great test. They don't make mistakes. They have really good game plans, especially on third down, but it's a lot easier going against, Jameis Winston than Joe Burrow and everything that they're doing with the pass game there. So yeah, I think it's the third downs of what I'm checking out, stealing one of your things, but from the other games, checking out the third downs because that's where Minter and Chargers show off, and the Bengals stay out of a lot of third and longs. They get a lot of 30 mediums because they're so efficient. So yeah, how does Burrow and mitigate anything? What does Minter throw at him? Kind of, I know you want to go to Jamar Chase. Are we going to let that happen? Are we going to force you to run the ball? Again, all things easier said than done. So yeah, I'm really excited to check this one out. You said Bengals pull it off. I think I'm with you on that, which is the Bengals will never die. They're the Goonies. That's what that. Are you a Goonies guy? Actually, have we ever even talked?
I've seen it one time.
Okay.
I was not in a state of mind in terms of my brain to remember everything that happened, but I have seen it.
Yeah. That's also like, I'm like on the tail end. Like this is like our little age difference gap. Like I'm on the tail end of Goonie years. I'm sure Brett is all over this right now. But yeah, it's a good one. I have a Goonies poster somewhere. All right. Next up, I threw this one in for you. This is Falcons, Broncos.
I'm terrified.
At Denver, Broncos are 2.5 point favorites. What are you checking out in this game?
I think if we're going to keep the theme on our down splits, I think if the Falcons aren't good on first and second down, they get nuked in this game. Like I don't think they have a chance. Kirk Cousins against this defense, like stationary in the pocket. I don't know. That sounds like a pretty bad time to me. And as good as Drake London and Darnell Mooney have been, like these CBs can absolutely, Surtain can erase either one of them, and Riley Moss can hold his own for sure. So I think it's going to be a tough game. If you can't run the ball this week, I would imagine they probably don't win this game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're built around that awesome run game. I'm fascinated. Yeah, just this side of the ball. What you said there at the end there, Surtain and Mooney, Moss versus London and Mooney. Do the Broncos travel Surtain a little bit on London? Like, do you just say, hey, we're going to race him, but then London lines up in the slot, does a lot of dirty work stuff? Are they comfortable with Surtain in the middle there? Surtain's a good tackler. That's like an underrated thing with this game. He's physical and will tackle. Nick Saban was not letting that happen in college. He's like, no, you're filling the run, man. But that I'm with you on that. That's what I'm just checking out. It's just how they take that away, because they know Bijan is the straw that stirs the drink of this offense and what they're going to try and do and run a ton of zone runs. Are they going to really knife stuff, do a lot of movement up the front and try and make them edgy? So I think the run game, and when every run is going to be not as like, tempo, like, like a metronome. I think for the Falcons, it's going to be more boom bust than I think we typically see their run game. So yeah, that side of the ball is good. The other side is like, what do you guys got? Maybe we see some Audric Estime. See some more of him. He looked pretty good last week. So, and then Bo Nix is doing better, I will say. And then I just think that Sean Payton is freaking cooking right now. His stuff's really good. He threw the kitchen sink out last week. Oh my God. Marvin Mims, backfield touches. Like he threw everything at the Chiefs last week. Prediction for the game other than Payne.
I think the Broncos win a low scoring one.
Okay. Over under is 44.5. Yeah, I would take the under. Yeah, I think Broncos take this too. I'm with you on that one. All right, last one. Wrap this up with Charles. We have an NFC North battle, one of the longest rivalries, the longest rivalry in the NFL. We got Packers Bears. Anything happening in Chicago this week? The Packers are now 5-point favorites. They were over 6 points at one point. So this is at Chicago. Packers are 5-point favorites. What are you watching in this NFC North tilt, Charles?
Do the Bears show like any sign of life yet? Like that's really the whole thing. Because this Packers defense is gettable. Like we talked about, teams and players playing within the margins. I don't know if any group embodies that more than the Packers defense, where if you look at down to down, they kind of suck, but they get turnovers. They're getting off the field when they need to. They're getting turnovers. So it's flimsy, but it's working for now. The Bears, if you have like any heart or, just balls, fortitude, like let's go. Your season's not over. You're 4-5. Still have a chance to make something out of it. I think that they could give the Packers a game if they're on top of what they're, on top of their program, but it just seems to be like a mess over there. So I really just want to see, it's not really like stats or breakdown related. Like, are you just going to show some signs of life? Because your season's not over and there's no reason to be acting like you're a 1-9 team at 4-5.
And also the Bears players sure seem to have a lot of opinions in the media. It's like, Jesus, why don't you guys just take care of your own stuff before you all start spouting out? I'm watching you guys. Some of you vets out there that are talking in the media. You guys aren't like above this. So, Shane, like losing, chopping off Shane Waldron is probably going to help in some ways. Like they have to find some ways to kind of make this offense all, more synchronized, look more like a Rams offense. And Thomas Brown has some Rams background with McVay. He has a background everywhere. He coached at Wisconsin for 1 year. But he at least, maybe do we see some more of that? Maybe see some stuff that's not as siloed. They need it. Like you said, the season's not done. They still have like a good defense. The offense can have like stuff. Like their run game's not bad. They still have receiving talent. They just have to figure out their personnel and everything. The Packers, though, coming out of bye, last year is when they really ascended. They had an early bye last week, but then after that, they only had like one negative expected points game after that on offense. They just started cooking as their young players started going. Kind of want to see them do the same thing this year. Just another year. They're still the youngest team, or at least the youngest offense. So again, do they ascend coming out of the bye week? Jordan Love gets a week to heal his groin. So now we can see some more trick shots. Hurt groin, Jordan Love, we didn't get to see the trick shots, and it makes me sad. So I want to see that groin looking good. So, that sounded bad. But anyways,
they needed the bye week. We'll say that. They really needed the bye week.
Yeah, they needed the bye week. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So I want to see them ascend out of it. But Bears are 5-point underdogs. Prediction for the game?
Packers. Maybe in a blowout.
Yeah, I think
in like one of those painful blowouts where it's like, you're just slow, because the Bears defense is still
slow bleed in the second half.
Right. Yeah. Slow bleed where it's like 7-0 at halftime and you look up, it's 27-0 at the end of the game. Something like that.
Like they're down 10, like it's a 17-7. They're down 10, they're driving on offense, and then they throw a pick. And then, or a fumble in the red zone. Packers drive down 24-7, and we go, "Wow, they lost by 17." Like that's I can see that too.
Their stuff on the sideline.
Yeah. Oh, you just hear the noise, just go, And then you got David Bakhtiari posing in the end zone. That's what we see in these games. No, that was fun. We got through all these. We got through one thing. Thank you, Charles, for joining me. Charles and I have something cooking, by the way.
We do.
Or not this weekend, but coming soon. We're gonna have a little extra football 3-1 for you guys. A little Sunday recaps hitting your ears a little quicker. So just want to drop a little hint on that we'll start cooking on that pretty soon. Thank you, Charles.
Aren't you at the game? I'll be at Jets Colts this week. That's why we're not starting our new little project, which, dude, I was a little worried. And then, because I requested to go on Monday, and I was like, this might suck, but I really want to go cover a game. And then Richardson got announced back. I was like, let's go. We got juice
Let's
again.
do it. It's not Adam Gase's Jets again. A little bit. Well, kind of a little bit. Yeah, that'll be fun for you. Thanks, Chuck, for joining me. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at 4verts. You can find me on Blue Sky at 4verts.
Yeah.
I haven't really posted much there because I don't remember my login, so I can't use it on the computer. So I haven't like posted any film or anything like that. I'm just tweeting on my. It's still tweeting. I'm still tweeting on Blue Sky from my phone. But yeah, I'm over there. Also, I'll be on the Dominique Foxler show this week. So
Nice.
Wherever you can check us out, we are all over the place all the time.
Yes, we are. Well, thank you again for Charles. You'll hear us next week. We also got a mock draft next week. But now, going to have Dane Brugler on to compare our big boards. We are back on Football 301. Not Prospects to Pros Part 2. I miss saying that every week, but I'm very excited for this. My former coworker at The Athletic, The Athletic's draft expert, Dane Brugler, who has just unveiled his updated top 50 big board. Very excited to go through it with you. How are you doing today, Dane? So good to see you.
How are you, my friend? I mean, we obviously talk offline, but this is the first time we've been on a podcast together in a while, so it feels good.
I know. That's because you get awakened every 3 months, and it's just like, and then it's like, is it Beast time? No, it's Beast 0.5 time.
We're
right
getting
now,
there.
you're half. Yeah. You're getting there. Oh, those character reports already starting to come in. You getting
I could share some stuff. Yeah, and this is the tough part of that because I get a lot of that info from scouts that are, oh, this is the worst guy I've met with all fall, and it's like, all right, what do I do with this information? Like how do I because obviously I'm not going to come out and just say that about a player, but I might bake it into the rankings a little bit. So if you see a player that's maybe a little bit lower for me, maybe something like that that some of the character stuff has to do with it. But yeah, that's always a tricky part of this.
Read between the lines sometimes. Well, I mean, the Jermaine Burton one held up. That was one you're always, oh, man, why isn't this guy a top 50 guy? Whoa, and then there he is getting yelled at by Joe Burrow, missing practices at a casino the night before the game. So maybe these character reports we should be listening to. Two different staffs that have dealt with so many personalities that are both like, not for us. So that should have been a little clue about that. But like I said, Dane has a big board. I had mine on Yahoo a couple of weeks ago. But Dane's is, like I said, he is the beast. He does actually the beast every year, which make sure you check that out. Subscribe to it, PDF form. I don't know if it's going to be paper form anymore, but PDF, you can download it. Okay. It's a phenomenal resource. For me, name pronunciations is worth the price of admission anyways, which I'm sure I'll stumble through a few. Some of these guys are like, I've only written. And you know what I mean? Like I watch them on film and write about them, but I never hear like a TV broadcast say their name or anything, which are always 50-50 anyways. So, so you might be teaching me a few, or we might be working through a few on this. But overview of the class, we're going to start with that. Then we're going to do a little big board comparison. But Dane, you finished your top 50 plus 20 more. I saw you had another article out there. The best position so far as we are at the halfway point of the 2025, really quarter point of the 2025 draft big board process. Like what's the best position that stood out to you?
I have to go defensive line and take your pick between edge rusher and defensive tackle. 9 of my first 20 in my top 50 were defensive line. So it's a top heavy group. But then I think both spots, defensive tackle and the edge guys, are well represented throughout this draft. So day 2, day 3. I mean, some of my favorite day 2 players are on the defensive line. Jared Ivey at Ole Miss, Alfred Collins, Texas, Jordan Birch, Oregon. Guys that maybe didn't sneak into that top 50, but they're going to be on NFL rosters next year and be valuable parts of a rotation. And then, maybe they can work into a starting role from there. So this is a draft class where if you want to get better on the defensive line, there are going to be plenty of options for you to do that.
Yeah, and what's kind of cool is there's some tweeners in a good way types, like, ones that, I mean, a guy I have to give my shout out to, Jack Sawyer, but then also just like a guy like Deion Walker from Kentucky, who we both kind of struggled with a little bit, but he's a 6'6" guy that moves at nose tackle, 3-tech, D-end. I still just say DL for my position thing, because I don't see him really as a nose. I see him as kind of a 3 or a 4-eye or something like that. But no, I think that's hitting a nail on the head. Some risers in that. Even going into this year, I thought edge and D-line was kind of what stood out to me going into the summer. But I mean, other guys rose up for you. I mean, I'll spoil one of them, Derek Harmon from Oregon, who, screw it, we'll just get into it. Defensive tackle from Oregon. I think he was 21 on my big board. He is 14 on your big board. I thought I was going to be the high guy on him, and you got it. We went up on me. But speak about Harmon, because for me, he was one of the biggest risers. He went from a guy that I glanced at, kind of thought maybe, third, fourth or some stuff, but really transferring to Oregon really stood out. But what'd you like about him to shoot so high to now like a top 15 player for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about disruption, right? If you have defensive tackles, and he's a defensive tackle, but he also plays D-end, and that
everywhere.
They play kind of like a like a 3-man front, and so he'll be a 3 technique. He'll be a more of a 5 or a D-end when they go to an odd front. But he's reshaped his body, and look, Oregon paid him a lot of money. I mean, he's getting paid in the 7 figures because he was at Michigan State. He transferred over to Oregon this offseason, reshaped his body, and you see there's still a little bit of sloppiness there, but he has gotten a lot better with his conditioning, and you see the athlete with the way he moves. But not just the way he moves in space, but through contact, his strong swipe moves. He wins with leverage. The biggest thing that I want to see improved from him is just the finish. I think if he finished at, say, 75% clip, he would have double-digit sacks. He would it is remarkable the pressure to sack ratio for him because he only has like 3 sacks, but the pressures are astronomical. I mean, he's top 3 in college football among interior defensive linemen. So the disruption's nonstop from him. He just needs to be a little bit more of a finisher. But the fact that you're getting in the backfield, creating these negative plays, that's enough for me to say, okay, this is one of the most disruptive players in this draft. So yeah, Derek Harmon, arrow pointing up for him.
Yeah, I know. I'm just glad I wasn't going crazy because I watched plenty of Oregon this year, watching them on film. And then I just kept seeing, really it was the Boise game because I was watching Genty too, and GT, and I'm watching them, and I'm just seeing, okay, there's 55. Okay, there he is. Oh, he's at 3-tech here, and he's doing that. He's looping around as a pass rusher, and so I just kept watching him. So I'm just kind of glad to see others are seeing the same thing because I think he's been a really fun guy to watch. We'll get to some other guys that we have some differences on. So I'll maybe break down some of these guys. I don't want to spoil one of the persons I want to talk about. But now on the flip side, what's the worst position that was probably of this draft, or at least at the top for your top 50? The worst position, or maybe the one not with the depth, or the guys at the top of the draft when you were doing this big board?
Yeah, I mean, safety and linebacker aren't great. That's kind of a theme almost every year, it seems like. Although we do have a top 10 safety this year, which is really refreshing. Offensive tackle isn't anywhere close to what it was in last year's class. But I'd probably have to go with center. It makes sense. Last year was so great at center. We had Graham Barton, Zach Frazier, Powers Johnson, even guys like Bo Limmer and Tanner Bortolini. They've made impact so far as rookies. So we're going from just a remarkable center class to this class, which is, the top senior right now, top senior prospect at center is probably Seth McLaughlin at Ohio State.
Okay,
maybe a fifth rounder. I don't know. I mean, it's
I have a day 3 grade on him. So
so this class is gonna need help from the underclassmen. Jared Wilson from Georgia has played pretty well, replacing Cedric Van Pran. Maybe he's a 3rd rounder if he comes out. Parker Brailsford from Alabama. He's the guy that I think could be I'd love to see him in college one more year, keep developing his body. He doesn't have that ideal frame, but he's a twitchy mover. He plays with some vinegar. I mean, he will get after you, but there's a little bit more development there that's needed. But if I could see him want to maybe capitalize on a bad center class and declare, because he'd probably be somewhere in that day 2 mix. So it's not a great year for if you're looking for an upgrade at center. This might not be your year.
Which a lot of teams are. So it's a hard position. No, that's interesting because I didn't have any in my top 50. I had maybe, like you said, maybe a couple guys I could like maybe see as tweeners at the next level and maybe bump over there. All about that arm length too. The tackle thing, and we have some differences on the tackle stuff. So again, I want to wait until the second half of the show to kind of get into those, but there's tackles I like and none I love. And that's at the top, that's in the middle of top 50, I should say. Just a little bit of everything. There's a lot like, oh, I like that. But as opposed to last year where I was, there's 3 at the top I loved. And then there's about 3 other guys. I mean, you guys started making fun of me how much I mentioned Graham Barton for about 3 months, like guys like that. Those guys are outclassed all these guys. So kind of with you on that.
Well, if Amarius Mims were in this class, he'd be a top 5 pick. I mean, he went 17 last year. So there's so many teams that are going to be picking a top 10 that could use offensive tackle help, and this class just doesn't have those guys, in my opinion.
And the other position we're about to talk about, quarterback help. This is not the year to be racing to the bottom, I would say, if you need a quarterback, which a lot of the teams in the top 10 do. Yeah, I just had this bullet point superlative I sent over to you. I just said, explain the quarterbacks, because I feel like all you and I do is text and go like, is this something? Oh, I like him. And then anytime any guy that we like, say Garrett Nussmeier, who's my quarterback 1, put him as quarterback 1, bombs the next 2 weeks. So you ended up with, I believe, was it Cam Ward as quarterback 1?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, no.
And
it was at 16 overall. So we'll start there with your quarterbacks.
What's always interesting when you do these rankings mid-season, where there's more tape coming in, there's games being played, so something could disrupt what you were thinking. And that's where I was with Garrett Nussmeier. I came out and said, look, this is right now, I don't love any of these guys, but if you make me put a quarterback 1 on somebody, I'm going to go Garrett Nussmeier, because he's actually doing quarterback things out there. The way the ball comes off his hand, the pocket maneuverability, just and he had single digit starts. So, we didn't have a lot of body of work to go off of. But then, you watch the second half of that A&M game, and then you watch him against the Alabama defense, and it's like, oh man, like things are moving way too fast. Once he gets, he starts to press a little bit, starts to throw these turnovers, and it's like, all right, well, calling him quarterback 1 doesn't look like, the smart move now. But a lot of teams are still really high in Garrett Nussmeier. Now, should he go back to school? Yeah, probably. He has 10 starts to his name. You want to get as much experience at the college level while still getting paid with NIL before you go to the NFL. So we'll see how that all plays out. But yeah, I went Cam Ward. Look, this is a quarterback class that, and when you talk to league guys, you talk to scouts, the only consensus is that there's not a lot of conviction on this group as any of them being true top 10 players.
But it's just let's talk about them. Like we're both going like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way I think when you talk about quarterbacks, you have to talk about it as if you're making a bet. So last year at this time, we felt good about making bets on Caleb, on Drake May, Jaden Daniels.
You were big on McCarthy for a while. So
JJ McCarthy was always in my first round. I felt good about making those bets. But this year it's just these bets feel a lot riskier. If you have to make a bet on a Cam Ward, on a Shedeur Sanders, now with Cam Ward, I get the glass half full with him because the upside, the progress he has shown. He's 6'2", 225, electric arm, the elusiveness in the pocket. It helps creates opportunities, but he plays really loose, and that's it's a double-edged sword, right? It's what makes him dangerous as a play creator, but also that loose decision-making leads to negative plays. And every tape, there's examples of both, where there's some turnover-worthy plays where he's holding the ball too long, taking sacks, but then, he pulls a rabbit out of his hat and is able to make this remarkable play you just don't see very often. So with him, I'm encouraged by the progress, like I said, because he was a wing T quarterback in high school. strict air raid at Incarnate Word and then Washington State. This year with Shannon Dawson, offensive coordinator at Miami, they're doing some new things that we haven't seen Cam Ward do. And so you see the talent, you see the upside. The character stuff has been great. Smart guy, confident leader. So all the stuff you hear along those lines are positive. And then, I think the biggest thing with me with Cam is I just want to see him do it against a defense that I respect. And, you look at that Miami schedule, the toughest defense they've faced so far, probably Georgia Tech, the game that they lost. And so selfishly, I'm rooting for Miami to make the playoff. I want to see him on a big stage like that against a Georgia, against Ohio State, to see how he performs against a defense more along the lines of what he's going to see on Sundays. And, you go back to last year, if Michael Penix, say if they don't make the playoff, he doesn't have that 430 passing performance against Texas in the playoff, is he still a top 10 pick? I don't know, maybe. I mean, consciously or subconsciously, having those big games on the big stage, that plays a factor. That matters. So with Cam Ward, I get the upside. I get the optimism with him, but there's a looseness to his play style that I think gives you some pause about really fully buying into him as someone that you want to take number one overall and believe he can really turn your franchise around.
That he's a fun guy for me in the back half of the first round, maybe at this point in time. He was quarterback 2 for me, right behind us. I kind of cheated and put him back to back on the big board. If you ever know that I'm trying to parse between two guys, that's the way to see that. If they're right next to each other. Yeah, I know. It's like, all right, I'm just going to write about both of them. No, I'm totally with you on this. I like a lot of what he does. I don't love a lot of what he does. And shoot, even how you started your big board article, which was just a quote from a scout you got, which says, "I don't envy you." And I'm truly, because we fly blind a lot on this, like, especially when you're putting a big board, you don't want outside noise. And sometimes I'm watching these guys, I'm like, am I just too harsh on them? Do I like the right guys too much or wrong guys too much? I ended up kind of spreading it, and I included 6 in my big board because I was just like, I don't know, guys. I'm trying to parse through this too. I just grouped these guys together. But with Ward, I understand the argument for him. Like you said, he's also pretty young for his grade, even though he's been an extended senior. I think he was a summer birthday. And so, like, when I watch him,
he'll
it's
be
just
22 when he's drafted. He'll turn 23 this summer.
23,
but the summer after he is drafted. Yeah,
it kind of threw me for a loop. He's younger than Nussmeier. And I thought Nussmeier's year was wrong, but he's actually, even though he's a class above him, I think. With Ward, it's the looseness you keep bringing up. It's like, that's what's cool, and that's also what makes you worried. He's so calm. And you can tell he's good in the big moments, but sometimes it's like, well, I need you to lock in a little bit. I need you to sometimes take that easy thing, and his arm is good, and at times very good, touches it, but it's not this elite arm that it's like, things get harder if you're going to try and create. He's a good athlete, not an elite athlete, and not a very, so it's a lot on the scouting scale, it's a lot of 5s and 6s, but I'm looking for 7s. And especially if I'm taking a guy top 10, so he's a guy I'm going to like. He'll probably always throughout this process stay in that kind of quarterback 1 to 3 range, all depending how the season wraps up, all this stuff. I agree with you on the playoff stuff. So we'll see. How many times Penix versus Texas has been cited, and how much CJ Stroud versus Georgia has been cited the last couple of years. Like, I think that's going to matter. Let's just continue down the quarterbacks. You also had 2 more in your top 50. You had Jalen Milroe at 22. Yeah, Jalen Milroe, and then Shadur Sanders at 23. You did the back-to-back thing. I understand this one's completely too. I had those 2 flopped. I had Sanders at my quarterback 3, Milroe my quarterback 4, kind of the same grouping though, same kind of area on my big board. We'll start with Milroe. What have you thought about him watching? Because personally, I feel like he's one of the most improved players in college football, just watching him compared to last year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you throw on the Rose Bowl tape against Michigan, and I mean, it felt like they were scared to just let him throw.
Do anything.
No, yeah. Rely on the run game and use his legs, use that athleticism, but they didn't fully trust him. This year, we're seeing an offense that is centered around his dual threat abilities. His ability to run is still a big part of that offense, but they also let him drop back, read the field, and then just uncork these lasers. I mean, he has a rare package of traits for a guy that's 6'1", 225, going to run in the 4.3s, and also has a rocket arm. I mean, it's kind of like a rocket fueled version of Jalen Hurts with the way that he is built. And, the mechanics are a little wonky. The ball placement is not a strength to his game, but it's like, okay, the improvements that he's shown are impressive. And if we're going to just bet on the traits and then lean into what he does well, I could see a team, kind of like what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts. I could see a team really looking at that and saying, hey, this might be our best option. Let's take a premier athlete like this who the mental makeup is outstanding as well. So you're getting a great leader, great person, and then you're getting a phenomenal athlete with a big time arm. It's different than Anthony Richardson. They're different players. It's not really apples to apples there. But, a team was really willing to bet on Anthony Richardson top 5. I could absolutely see a team willing to bet on a guy like Jalen Milroe in the top 25. So, but again, it's going to take a team that's fully bought into leaning into what he does well and kind of changing their entire offense.
Yeah. Is there any comparisons to Justin Fields? Reminded now, trust me, Fields has been a great learning experience for me from prospect to now watching him develop. But I'm not trying to damn him or anything, but just traits wise, some flaws, maybe the extended throwing motion time kind of takes that extra half, wind up, I guess you put it. Some of the throws that he makes does well, like he'll gun in those seam balls and really rocket those in there. But once in a while he'll spray some underneath stuff. So that was kind of who I got reminded of a little bit. Was I thought Fields played a little differently, but as far as traits and maybe some of the throw style and everything. But I went in going into the season not thinking Milroe would make my top 50 at the halfway point. I was not high on him going into this year. And this is a guy that loves traits at quarterback. I was just kind of like, I've seen this guy throw past the line of scrimmage where he's passed the line of scrimmage like 4 times and now 5 times this year. And that's what I remember most about him. Not anything else that he did. I remember the Rose Bowl game against Michigan where they were, turned into a wing tee offense basically to just not have to throw the ball. And I watched him this year and it's one and done, but he's making that one and done decision so quick. And that's what's unlocking his gifts. It was a game against your
Badgers that kind of flipped it for me.
His
ability to those downfield throws. It was really impressive. I was like, okay, if you're going to tell me that you could make these downfield throws consistently, even if they are half field reads and he's kind of determining pre-snap where he's going, it's still progress and it's still like, okay, we've got something here. He
didn't flatline his development. It was actually which is huge. It's not Blake Sims.
And he's a junior, so a 4th-year junior, technically could go back to school. We'll have to kind of see. I think he's been a starter now for a couple of years. I think he's like 75-25 coming out, but I don't know. We'll have to kind of see how the next month and a half changes that.
God, it just seems all these guys. It's like I understand if they go back. Like even Nussmeier, who's my QB1. It's like if he goes back, I totally get it because he might be the Heisman front runner next year, and LSU might be good. So, all right, the last one in your top 30, Shedeur Sanders, Colorado. You have him 23 overall. I had him just behind that, 29 overall. So same kind of tier. Shedeur Sanders, what'd you think about him so far this year?
He's a good player. Like, I don't think any conversation about Shedeur is he good or not? Like, he's clearly a good player. I think his poise, his accuracy, his toughness, like those are all things I think you can point to and say, oh yeah, that'll work. That'll work in the NFL. I'm not impressed by the physical traits. He's 6'1", maybe 210 at best. His arm is B level. I think in terms of quarterbacking style, it reminds me a lot of Jordan Love without the high-end physical traits. The way they bounce around, they backpedal at times, they keep the weight on their back foot, they use a lot of different platforms to throw the football. Shedeur grew up watching his dad, this elite athlete, do these different things. I think Shedeur thinks he has some of that in him when he's not even close. Like 4
tiers apart.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a quarterbacking style that he has that a guy like Jordan Love can get away with, but I just don't know if Shedeur will be able to get away with that at the next level. And again, I mentioned this with Cam Ward. I want to see Shedeur against a defense that I respect. And the two best defenses that the Colorado has faced this year, Kansas State and Nebraska, both losses and both games where I thought Shedeur didn't handle himself the best. And a lot of that is working the pocket and understanding where the rush is coming from. He's not a bad athlete. He's a good athlete in order to kind of move around, but he takes too many sacks. The offensive line for Colorado is going to get brought up endlessly throughout the draft process, but a number of these sacks are on the quarterback. So look, it's only going to get tougher against NFL speed. I don't know. Like I said, I think Shedeur is a good quarterback, but I have plenty of concerns about what he's doing and how it's going to work at the next level. I don't have conviction that this is a guy that you're going to be able to plug in and all of a sudden he's going to start leading my team to wins.
He's very mechanical. And, he's been coached, and I mean that in a good way and a bad way, where it's that this feels, as far as his tools wise, everything's maxed out. And some of that feel in the pocket don't get me wrong, he has gotten way better in the pocket compared to last year, but last year he was poor. And now this year it's average at best. And he's stepping up a little bit better, but it's still, his first instinct is to move backwards, which is the biggest no-no. You brought it up that Love can do it. Love is 6'4", 230 with a plus end. That's why he can move back and do those things and has the size to get out, defenders' grasps. You before the season had the verified numbers from Shedeur for the spring, and it was 6'1", 198, I believe. Yeah, and that's where I was like, whoa. Yeah. Anything under 205 that's even for Nussmeier. I have size concerns about him. I got to see what he's going to be. But with Shedeur, especially how he wants to play, those traits just don't match his play style. And again, like you said, it gets harder in the NFL. So
it's like he's going to run in the 40. I mean, maybe 4.8. I mean,
that's what I figured.
Yeah, right. He's maybe 4.76 at best. He's just not that type of athlete. So yeah, it's the lack of physical traits or high-end physical traits is something that it bothers me. I mean, it's something that I'm not going to compare him to Bryce Young. Bryce Young was such an outlier in terms of size and all that. But it's something that if you're talking about a top 10 pick, because if you do a mock draft, that's where you see a lot of Shedeur Sanders in the top 10, and he might actually go that high because teams are desperate for quarterbacks. I would not have any conviction in drafting him that high.
Yeah, that's I come back to that same thing. The tools do matter, and the fact is his play style doesn't mitigate that, and that's like Nussmeier. I can make an argument for it because he mitigates it, with his pocket feel, getting rid of the ball quickly. When you're trying to use that athleticism or your thoughts of your athleticism and your arm strength, it's kind of. I texted you my comparison for him was kind of a Diet Coke Jameis. He's better with the ball as far as not putting the ball in harm's way than Jameis, but kind of that same thing where they maybe think they're more than what they actually are. And then, like I said, you had, to wrap it up, you had Nussmeier at 30. He was my one, had them in the teens. You have the Tony Romo comparison to Nussmeier. I just want to wrap it up with that. Like a Diet Coke Romo. How about Chad Pennington? A little bit of a mix between the two. Pennington had a little bit more wild horse than you remember. And anytime I think of these old comparisons, I try to find some old YouTube game just to make sure I'm not totally off. So yeah, I saw some shades of Pennington in there, which that's my QB1, and that kind of sums up the class. My QB1 is a Diet Coke Chad Pennington.
He was drafted mid to late first round. So
yep. In the 20s. I think the Jets had 4 first-round picks that year or something like that.
That's
something crazy.
Yeah. I don't know. I get Nuss. Trust me, I've taken it on the chin for having him as my quarterback one couple weeks ago. And I still really like him. All these guys are pretty closely ranked for me. I hope he goes back. I really do. Because I think he can get a lot better. And I don't know that he'll ascend to Joe Burrow or Jaden Daniels status in year 2 as starters for LSU, like those guys did. Mm-hmm. But he could absolutely take any doubt out of being a top 10 pick. And,
a true lottery pick.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. If I were him, hopefully he goes back. Obviously, Cam and Shador they're seniors. They will be in this class. And like I said, if I had to make a bet on who's going to be the first quarterback drafted, I think it'd be Cam Ward and then Shador at some point in the first round. And I mean, hey, there's a good chance maybe he could join you as a Las Vegas resident here in 6 months. I don't think Mark Davis will be able to help himself.
Oh my God. That's what they need. They just have the circus tent hanging over there. Just bring it over from Absinthe or anything like that. Just put it over the stadium. They just love it here. Oh no. I wish we got Norv Turner back in the NFL. I'll get to enjoy that a little bit.
There you go.
I thought we were gonna get some Ritter starting, and they said nah. They said no, we're going back to Minshew. So don't get that here in Raiderville. I'll wrap this up, or this section up, with let's talk more about the skill positions. Going running backs, you had 3 guys in your top 50. I had 4 in my top 50, and then 2 in my next 10, which is my cheat list of like, hey, I like these guys too. Don't yell at me. Really good running back class, though. We both kind of agreed on that. I think a lot of day 2 guys, just knock out the 3 guys that you in your top 50. Obviously, starting with one guy, number 6 overall, who had at number 8 overall, and I'm totally with you on this.
Yeah. Mr. Ashton Jeanty, Boise State.
Yes.
When I watched, this summer, he was one of my favorite players that I watched. I mean, I was kind of blown away. He was easy running back 1 for me, and I was ready going into this season to just go to war for this guy. But the way he's played this year, it's not really necessary. I think people kind of like, all right, he's the guy. It'll be interesting to see how early he gets drafted. We saw Bijan be a top 10 pick. Jahmyr Gibbs was a top 12 pick. Jeanty will, it takes the right team. So there's a little bit of luck there with how the draft plays out and the team fits and all that. So that'll be really interesting. Running back 2 and 3 for me were Caleb Johnson from Iowa and then Marion Hampton from North Carolina. 2 guys that are big, physically impressive looking dudes, but once they get rolling, they've got some speed too. So, and they hate to be tackled. I mean, the balance that they run with is outstanding. Both Ohio State backs just missed for me, Travion Henderson and who's your guy?
Quinshon Judkins.
Quinshon Judkins, thank you.
Did you say your guy? Yeah, it is my guy. I really like Judkins.
You do love him, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Him and Jeanty were 1-2 for me going into the season, and then Jeanty blew it out of the water.
I like Judkins
I have him
too.
at 40.
Okay. Yeah. My issue with Judkins this year is like he knew what he was signing up for by going to Ohio State and sharing carries. Like I think he's okay with that. I don't think he's upset by any means. But every time, because he's averaging like 11 carries a game. So every time he gets a carry, he's so hungry to go make a play that it's just like boom, boom, boom. He is just running right into that defensive line. And if you just a little more patience, I think that he could really break some big runs, because once he clears that first wave and he gets a linebacker in open space or a safety, I mean, he can run through him, make him miss. He's got some big playability. I just want to see a little bit more tempo and patience from him.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. He doesn't have the high top end speed. Like he's a true doubles hitter only, like very much an Edgar Martinez playing running back. I'm so glad I have you here. I can make baseball references again. But him and Henderson, I had in my 40s. I'm with you on it. And Henderson, I like. It's just that he has some, there's some vision stuff and everything that can't get on board with. Well, I'll say about
especially inside.
As
an inside runner, there's some, definitely. But if you get him the ball in space, man,
he can go, and he's good protection.
Yeah, and that's the thing. As a third down back, there's a clear path to Travion Henderson being an NFL guy. Because, I mean, last week against Purdue, they line him up out wide and get him mano-a-mano against a linebacker, and he runs a little out and up or some type of double move and gets vertical, and Will Howard put it up for him, and Travion Henderson slowed down the route, caught it, and kept going. So, look, he is a guy that can show up on third down, play in any situation, and so, that's a really good running back situation they've got going on in Columbus.
Yeah. And then, you mentioned Johnson from Iowa. He was in my next 10. So like top 60, basically. And then I had Devin Neal in my next 10 in my top 60. I just
you
really
love Devin Neal. That's right.
I do, man. That's a good player. Like, I just like him. Like, he just does everything I really like. And even his build is exactly how I like my running backs. I don't know, look as much like Muwaldi Moore as possible, and I'm good.
Tulane, great.
Yes.
A few of my favorites outside of like the top 50, top 75. Jordan James from Oregon. I mean, he just runs angry. Woody Marks from USC. If you want a guy that can show up as a receiver, that's your guy. And then Phil Maffa from Clemson's a lot of fun as well. So this is such a great running back class.
It's such a good one. Yeah, I know. Judkins, we didn't even talk about him. Or not Judkins, Hampton, expanding on him. I loved watching him. He's going to have some, tread on his tires after this year. But he's a good back. He gets rolling, got good vision. He tempos stuff really well, which I really like for a big back. I was a big fan of him, but fun class. Wrap this up with receivers for this section, and tight ends is interesting. We'll talk about it later. But Tet McMillan from Arizona. I just call him Tet. Does he go by Tet?
Smart.
I call him Tet.
I go T-Mac. So
Okay, nice. All right. Yeah. He's King Tet. McMillan, you had him at 5 overall, which I love. Actually, I had him at 12, and it was one that we were talking about things we regret. We might talk about that later. That's one I was like, I should have bumped you up. I really like him. But Luther Burden at 10, I had him at 21. Elic and Eomanor. Elic Eomanor from Stanford. Yeah, we're getting there. You had him at 28 overall, and I really like him. He made my top 50 before the season. I had him in my next 10. He was like my first one off. He was 51 of top 50. Emeka Abuka from Ohio State, 35. Love him. I have a 32 overall. I know exactly what he's going to be. This is the guys I fall in love with every single draft. Evan Stewart from Oregon, really fun player. And then Isaiah Bond from Texas at 45. Stewart, you had at 36. I'm sorry. What'd you think about this receiver class? Any of these guys really that you liked and stood out to you?
Yeah, T-Mac is a lot of fun because he's 6'5", 210. He has this Gumby-ish movements to him. He's so, the thing that I appreciate the most about him is he catches the ball away from his body. It doesn't matter where the placement of the ball is. 100% of the time, he catches it away from his body and consistently. So the ball skills, his ability to high point are outstanding. Now, some of the routes are, he's young. He's still getting better as a route runner, some of the pacing, things like that. But he has the athleticism. He's not going to run a 4.3, but in terms of some of the movement skills and all that, I think are there.
On his routes, which is really good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so he's not, I wouldn't say a premier separator, but I think that is more based off of him just learning how to run routes the right way. But Arizona has not been a good team this year. T-Mac was still the first player in college football to go over 1,000 yards receiving this year. So he is a big play waiting to happen. Luther Burden, it's another situation where the production's not necessarily going to look great. But I think especially when, you think of what we're seeing in today's NFL. Defenses they're forcing quarterbacks to go underneath and the check down option. And it just makes yak receivers all that more important, more than ever. And so a guy like Luther Burden, who is basically a running back once he gets the ball in his hands, I think that's where he could really feast and really be a big part of an offense pretty quickly. So, I think it's interesting. If we call Travis Hunter a corner, who's wide receiver 3? I think that's a really interesting discussion because, like you said, Egbuka, you hate to use the word safe, but he might be the quote unquote safest option. Because he's so well rounded. Like you said, you know what you're getting. He's wrapped in transparent wrapping paper. You know exactly what you have with him. And then Evan Stewart.
Hello, my number 2 Z that does the dirty work. It's like God. I know exactly what he is.
And he's a 4th-year senior. He's a veteran. He's already graduated. Smart. Like he's a pro playing college football right now.
His high school coach tweeted at me because I tweeted one of his clips of him blocking. And his high school coach was like sharing his high school highlights with me, which was really cool. And he was saying he had my favorite play of all time. Like he was playing defense. He was out there. We didn't go over this look. And then he ends up with a pick 6 because he was so smart and aware. And I was like, just, you don't have to sell him even more to me. But that's exactly what I want to hear. But and then the other guys that you had.
Well, I mean, look, Evan Stewart, he has the talent to be wide receiver 3 in this class. I want to see it on film. He has more games this year of 20 yards or less than he does 100-yard games. So it's like, okay, I know you have it in you. You have a Heisman contender at quarterback. You're the top receiver in that offense. Tez Johnson's out with an injury. Let me see you go make these big plays. Now, he did it again on the Ohio State tape. I mean, he burned Denzel Burke a few times, but I want to see you more consistently use that talent to be an impactful part of the offense. So Stewart, absolutely, by the next time we have like a top 50 update, could absolutely be there. A.O. Manor from Stanford, 6'2", 215, 4.4 speed, physicality, win at the catch point. The Stanford coaches, they say he's going back, so we'll kind of see on that, but love the talent. Isaiah Bond, a really sudden athlete from Texas. He's so undisciplined as a route runner. The timing is off. I want to see more out of him, but the suddenness keeps me coming back to Isaiah Bond as a guy that, okay, he could really be something if he adds more polish to his game. And I'll say that, this receiver class, it's not what we saw last year. Last year we had 10 in the top 40, I believe. We're not going to have that this year, but I do like some of the day 2 options. Iowa State's got 2 of them. Jaden Higgins, 6'4", 212, plays receiver almost like a basketball player. And then his teammate, Jalen Noel, who's smaller. He's 5'10", 196 pounds, but he's going to run in the 4.4s. And scouts say that he's the alpha of that room. So I like some of the options on day 2 that, maybe we're not talking about as top 50 players, but this is a class where a wide receiver is going to stretch.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. A lot of guys I like. It's not as overwhelming as last year. Bond actually grew on me more. At first, I didn't like him, and then as I watched him, I'm like, okay, I get it. You actually see his speed as opposed to maybe Worthy. So that's like, if I'm gonna have Worthy at that grade, Bond, I'll give a bump up. Don't grade the helmet though, Dane. But the other guy I have to give a shout out to, he did not make my top 50 or top 60 because I have a permanent. He's going to make my top 100. I could already tell you that. Xavier Restrepo from Miami, just because he's one of my favorite players in college football. And that's because I watched so much Tyler Van Dyke over the last few years. And this is all he would throw. Is the only guy he would throw to. And then now he's with Cam Ward. I think he's a 6th-year guy and everything. But he's the guy you take at early 4th. I know what he is. He's, a smaller guy, but good route runner, savvy. I just have to give Xavier Restrepo a shout out because just really like his game.
He's 5'10", 200 pounds, probably going to run a 4.54, but you know what? He catches everything and he's tough. Everything. And he's going
to be a number 3 and play in the league for 8 to 10 years. That's going to be that. Yeah. That's it. I know what he is. I know what his ceiling is, but it's like, I don't know. Useful is what we always come back to. And that Restrepo is useful. But that's a guy.
Trademarked that word yet for scouting purposes? I don't know. You should if you haven't.
Useful. I know. I just steal from other sports and then throw them into football and then act like they're new. But I did want to talk about tight ends, but we'll talk about those a little later. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll come back with a little more comparisons of our big boards, a couple more superlatives, and we'll wrap it up with Dane. Okay, we're going to do a few more big board comparisons. This is also a way to kind of tie in the tight ends with this one. I'll start with a guy that I was super high on, and you kind of said, yeah, he's interesting. He runs like a duck, though, and then just maybe hate him. No, but I'm kidding. Harold Fannin Jr., tight end from Bowling Green. I had him at 27. You had him kind of as your next 20. I believe you did a list there, so kind of a top 75 grade. And everything. Really just want to give him a shout out because it's hilarious what he's doing on Tuesday nights. Like just a tight end catching 100 yards, running like a duck. No one can tackle him. But yeah, I just wanted to mention him. So you had Loveland at 13.
He's a good receiver, right? I mean, he is.
Yeah. And he's a willing blocker. That's what sold me on him. I was like, oh, you'll block a little bit too. Yeah. I was a little juicy on him, but end of second round, early third, if Tommy Tremble can go at the end of the second, like Harold Fannin can. Brendan Strange.
I would love to see him enter the portal and go to, Ohio State or Michigan or Georgia or get paid and go to a big conference and see what he could do. he's just so dang, like there's his body stiffness really bothers me, but he's just a good receiver, ball skills. And I love guys that show up against the best competition. And you watch the A&M tape, he shows up. You watch the Penn State tape, he shows up. So he's a fun player.
Just had to talk about him real quick. Okay, a few other guys that you bumped into your big board, which I thought was very interesting. First one that stood out to me, this was an unranked guy, probably the guy I have the least exposure to, and I think it was really cool. You dropped him in here. It's Mike Green from Marshall. You had him at 37 overall, edge player. Tell me about Mike Green, because I have limited exposure to him, and it's pretty cool to see him. You have him in your top 40.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of saying, who? Like, I don't think a lot of people knew about him. Look, he's a little undersized, 6'3", 250. His arms are 32 and change. But he's just a lot of fun to watch. Violent edge setter in the run game, explosive mover as a pass rusher, consistently wins gaps, creates his own rush lanes. I got some upset text messages for having him ranked so high, because I think people were trying to keep him a secret. Baby. But yeah, he's not going to be a secret much longer. He's a good player. And look, he literally leads the FBS in sacks. So it's not like he's kind of going under the radar in terms of production. He is just a hard guy. I was initially, when I watched his tape, I expected to see a pretty good pass rusher, but maybe a guy that doesn't hold up against the run, considering his size. But I've been really impressed by his ability to get off blocks, go make plays. The motor doesn't quit. He is a fun player to watch.
Yeah, no, that was a good shout. I watched him earlier this week after you popped that out there. So I that was really interesting. I mean, shoot, last year, this was Quinyon Mitchell time. This is when you dropped him, I would say right around the same place, like somewhere in the early 30s. I think you had him originally, maybe in there. And look what's happening now. He might win Defensive Rookie of the Year, along with Cooper DeJean.
They hit pretty good on those first two picks, huh? The Eagles.
Hey, good players. Draft the good players. It's a good philosophy. The other one, I had him in my next 10, but you had him at 15 overall. And that's Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. I totally get this. So this was one when I said instantly regretted, this was one I wish I boosted up. But tell me about Stewart. A&M's got a really fun front. You had him above Scourton, didn't you?
Yeah.
Or did you? You did.
To me, Stewart's the best defensive
he stood out more
prospect on that defensive line.
Yeah.
Aggies off
more
defensive line is that Aggies defensive line is great. I mean, they're
insane.
It's that game coming up against Texas is going to be so much fun to see how it turns out. I mean, Stewart is just, for a guy that's 6'6", 290, doing some of the stuff that he does, it's just like, I'm kind of getting ahead of the bump that's coming, is the way I kind of explain it. Because he's, and it shows up on tape. It's not just the measurables. It shows up on tape, the way he plays. Another, kind of, we talked about it with Derek Harmon, who, a guy that is not finishing enough. And if he did, we'd be talking about him a lot more in terms of just the sack numbers. It's the same thing with Shamar Stewart. If he finished a little bit better, and part of it is because he goes so hard, so fast, that he just over pursues and just these flyby tackle attempts. But the athletic balance that he plays with, the fluidity at 290 is exceptional, and he plays his ass off for 4 quarters. So, again, finishing issues, he needs to play with better control, but they'll play him on the edge. They'll play him over the B gap. They'll play him all over that defensive line. And so he's the South Carolina tape. That was one where, even though South Carolina won, number 4 is just all over the place, just wrecking things. And it was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, no, that's a great shout. He stood out more to me than Scourton, who I kind of kept up a little higher than you, but like his tape was underwhelming, which we texted each other about. So
he's a good player.
He is. I
think I'm top 10. Like, I don't know. And look, he's one of the youngest players in this draft. He is really, really young, and so part of it is you're expecting him to, 3 years from now when he's 23 years old, what's it going to look like? So I get it with Scourton, but his pass rush efficiency is just way down compared to what you expect.
Down to down. I'm not saying he's not a competitive player, but his down to down speed was kind of like lacking for me. It was like like when he had to crank it up, it wasn't even as cranked up as I thought it would be. Like, I was like, all right, here it comes, passing down, pin those ears back. All right, that was solid. Like, it wasn't like some overwhelming hole. Like, you watch Abdul Carter, who you had a 3, I had a 4. like overall from Penn State. It's like he cranks it up. You're like, oh yeah. That's a top 5 pick right there. Scoured looks more like just useful 3-down edge, but as not really a guy that's like, oh yeah, I'm taking this guy top 10 because he's gonna get me 12 sacks on his rookie contract. So no, that was a good one. The another one that I text you right away that I should have had this guy up there, but Nick Amanawari from I think I got that one from South Carolina, 41 overall, a safety. And I had him unranked, but I get this because it's traits and tools with this guy, right?
No, and you texted me right away, and you're like, "Yeah, I should have included," because you get it. He looks like a linebacker. Yeah, I mean, he looks like a linebacker, but he moves kind of like a corner. Just impressive size, speed. The range, he'll string out runs because of that sideline speed. He is grabby in coverage. I mean, there's some times where he is more physical than he needs to be, and the flags will come. But give me those types of athletes, and you can do different things with them with the way that you utilize them in your back seven. So yeah, big fan of what he brings. That South Carolina defense as a whole. I mean, Kyle Kennard up front. They've got like 3 defensive tackles that are going to play in the NFL. TJ Sanders was a guy that I just left off my top 50, but could have made it. So yeah, that South Carolina defense as a whole is really impressive.
Yeah. And I watched plenty of LSU this year, and then watching them go against that South Carolina defense was a war. That was a lot of fun. We both still have Will Campbell's OT1, so I am happy about that one too as well. That won't change for me. I don't think it'll change.
I don't think it'll change for me, but
unless he has 31.25-inch arms. Well, but even that, I'm like, whatever.
Let me get your opinion. Where would Will Campbell have been in last year's tackle class for you in the stack? So obviously he's behind Joe Alt, behind. Probably
I would have
Latham,
behind Shanu, behind Latham.
Fuaga.
I had because Fuaga I was a little lower on, but I had a late first on. So like in between, and I was really high on Troy Fontenot, but that was because I could argue that he could play 5 spots, and that like I actually think Campbell could stay on a tackle. So it'd be the Fontenot tier, which is like so he would be like OT or O lineman 5. Really when it comes down to it, O-lineman 4, tied for that compared to last year's class. And that, I mean, even Barton was up there for me. So like that kind of tier of Fontenot, Barton, and Campbell. But Campbell, he might, some teams needs a tackle. Like I like his leadership. Like you watch him on film and you see how smart he is. Like he's pointing out blitzes and stuff. And I just and he plays hard. He does a lot of good things. It's just one of those guys that's like, I want this guy on my team because I think he's a winning player.
And he's still just 20 years old. Like he's young. I mean, he started at left tackle as a true freshman at LSU, which is not an easy thing to do. I mean, some guys were just
the SEC? Born. I heard the SEC is pretty tough.
Yeah. Some guys were just born to be offensive linemen. And I mean, Will Campbell falls in that category. He's just, and I think his arms are going to be right around 33. I mean, it's going to be like 32 and 3/4, or it's going to be right around 33, which is not ideal, but I don't think his length is necessarily like even his negative reps on film. I don't think are length related. Right. So
nope. It's inside moves. Inside moves is what gets him, which is more of a shoulder placement thing. And I think he, he's getting kind of the bad athlete rep, which I do not agree with because I think I see this guy because it's the funky stance, and he really sinks. Like I'm curious what his power clean numbers are because he can like really just sink under him forklift guys. Like, I just want him on the team.
He's tall. I mean, he's almost 6'6", so he's a taller guy.
And big, good in the run, good in the pass. Yeah, actually, we'll just segue right on to another offensive lineman. I can't wait to say this one. It's probably the first time I ever say his name out loud. Ariante Ursary from Minnesota.
Yeah.
You had him at 46. I had him at 18, and I actually was really liking his film this year. I had him pretty high at the beginning of the year. So, but why 46? You think that probably hasn't improved this year or something like that? I don't know why I segue like that. That's a leading question, Your Honor.
I struggle with him, man. I mean, he's big, 6'6", almost 340. No issues with length. He's like over 34-inch arms. I it's sloppy for me.
Okay.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of Iquanu, like where both the good and the bad. Where like he can move pretty well. Like he can reach and seal a 3 technique. I mean, he has movement skills, but his hands are often wide, and when they're inaccurate, it just really leads. He's either hooking or he's hugging. There are just too many sloppy elements to his game. Like the timing and the posture need to improve. I don't know. The timing was off with him. I get it because of the size but I didn't see a first round pick myself. That's just me. But I'm eager to see him in one-on-one opportunities, at Senior Bowl, All-Star game, because I think he can anchor. When guys come at him down the middle, he will anchor down and stop them dead to rights. But when he's asked to redirect or anything like that, I think that's where it got a little troublesome for him. So, and for a bigger guy, I don't know. I just expected a little bit more edge to the way he's
not
finished.
a mauler.
No, he's not. That's not really his blocking style. So that was a little disappointing as well. I think it was the Michigan tape that really kind of got me. Oh man, I don't know. So I'm more on the fence with him.
He falls a few times. Yeah, I know exactly. Right. I know exactly why you're saying that. I couldn't get away from him because just some of the tool stuff and the highs were so good with him, so high. You mentioned the cut off the 3 technique. Anytime I see a tackle do that, I'm like, oh. And then if they're 330, I'm like, oh, because that's just a sign of like functional athleticism. But I agree with you. Some of the hand stuff will not let him use his athleticism. Like, and again, I'm always like, oh, you can coach that up. But again, it's like you hopefully get to the right coaching staff to do that. So no, I'm bullish on him, but I totally get the qualms.
I get it.
Yeah. Technically don't
especially
have a first round grade
class, because this is not a great tackle class. And so teams are going to want tackles no matter what, and I could absolutely see him going much higher than I have him, closer to your range where you have him.
I mean, look at the tackles. Right? We're both squinting at Josh Connerly from Oregon. He's improved, but he has anchor issues. He can move well. Kind of reminds me of Marshall.
His recovery balance, his recovery athleticism is saving grace. Like his hands are all over the place. His timing's off, but his feet and his recovery athleticism. If you can do that, all right. Like I'm gonna take a bet on you that we'll figure the rest out.
And and this year I think he's finishing plays better. Like he understands, like, oh, I have to give that extra half second. He's not, he's not a glass eater, but it's just that I'm seeing him actually like understand what he has to accomplish. Like you said, the hands are all over the place, but can't coach that footwork. Like I really liked him. But even the other guys, Josh Simmons, tackle from Ohio State, had tremendous film, and then gets hurt. Cameron Williams from Texas, right tackle, is a giant. It's like, absolute monster. Yeah, I know. It's just like all these guys. And then Kelvin Banks, who's the tackle for Texas, left tackle for Texas, really smooth, has a good film this year. I kind of see him more as a guard. I don't know about you. Okay, good. All right.
He's a guard.
I'm going crazy here. Okay, good.
But
good.
Even as a guard, he worries me because he's not the most powerful guy. I don't know. I struggle with Kelvin Banks.
With you.
Yeah, I don't see the top 10 stuff with Kelvin Banks. I don't see it. You watch the Michigan tape and he's all over the ground. You watch the Georgia tape and it doesn't look good. I was very underwhelmed. I think he's a good player. I was just underwhelmed with when you have expectations of being one of the better players in this class, which I just don't think he is. And then, at right tackle, Cam Williams, who 6'5", 335, and you move like that. But man, he is so raw. Like you can tell this is his first year starting.
Yes.
I still think he'd be a first round pick if he declared. I mean, even if it's in the late 20s, just because you're projecting out and what he could be. But I mean, Amarius Mims was so far ahead of where Cam Williams is right now. So I don't think I understand why people want to make that comparison, but Mims was so far ahead in terms of what you see on tape compared to what Williams puts on tape.
I don't want to throw this name out there. Who's the Georgia offensive lineman Titans drafted that fluked out? Was that Wynn?
Isaiah Wilson.
Isaiah Wilson.
No, got to be the worst first round pick of all time, right?
at least in recent memory, up there with Demetrius Underwood for the Vikings. Anyone wants to Google that
We're getting
one.
to your childhood issues.
Anyone wants to Google that one? We'll check that one out. Wilson. I'm not saying like personality or anything, but body type and everything, and just where they're at as a player. And he was a JUCO guy. Wilson was, but that's I don't know. There's that was the guy that came to my mind, and I don't mean that as a bad way. Just player in particular. Last one here. And this is one totally understandable once you explain it. Benjamin Morrison, corner from Notre Dame. I kind of hedged and kept him in my top 20. You left him unranked. You were going to drop him a little bit, but he also suffered an injury. So you had him at unranked, a player that a lot of people had top 15 for a while. Some still do. So why'd you drop him on your updated big board?
I think the lack of play strength really shows up on film. I don't think he had a great year before the injury. So based off of that and the lack of play strength, I had him as kind of like in the 30s, maybe in the early 40s overall on my board. But then the hip injury just kind of dropped him out for now. I mean, hopefully the rehab goes well and he's working out for teams this spring. No long-term concerns, but I don't know. Hip injuries for a corner, little worrisome. That kind of matters.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We'll
see how it plays out.
What's a word you usually want from, or what you usually want from corners? Loose hips. Well,
you want that fluidity. Gotta flip your hips.
Put some scar tissue there, some stitching. I don't know if that's going to be the best thing for there.
And you mentioned Josh Simmons too, which another guy.
Let's talk about
think
Simmons.
He would be in that OT1 conversation for me if he were healthy. But now with the patella, it's a tough thing to come back from. We don't even know if he'll be in this draft class. So a lot of things kind of up in the air with Simmons.
His cutoffs are really good. We talked about the backside cutoffs. Oh man, that was firing me up. But I had him at 25 over. Yeah, I had Simmons at 25 overall. Emory Jones was a big dropper for me from LSU. He's the guy I actually see move to guard. But
he's a guard. I agree.
He's a guard, yeah. He's good in a run game. He's not built like it. I'm like, oh yeah, you're going to be this tackle that's going to be loose. I'm like, we're bumping you to right guard. But I do like what he does in a run game. But no, it's an interesting, quarterbacks and tackles in this class. That's what it is. You're like, you're squinting. There's some good. There's some traits that you like, and then there's some that is just like, leaves you wanting more. So,
and even a couple of the guys I had in the 40s, Wyatt Millham from West Virginia.
Oh yeah, he was in my next 10. Yeah,
he's left tackle in college, but his arms are closer to 32 than 33, and
he's a guard.
It's funny. He's a natural lefty, so it helps for being a left tackle. He's actually committed to Marshall to be a big lefty pitcher for them at one point. Kind of remind me of like Kyle Long. Because he was a big lefty pitcher at Florida State before he decided to go
like a legit one. Yeah. Jeff Schwartz was a good pitcher in high school. I'm not sure if he was allowed. I don't think he was recruited in baseball, but he was another one.
So
the pitcher to tackle archetype is not your usual. Not the usual one.
Once Millham started hearing from Alabama and Notre Dame, he was like, "All right, I'm gonna go football." But he's just a good player. I think he's gonna be inside a guard, but he's just a good player. And then Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, who the only FCS player. Was he on your top 50?
He was. I really liked him. That Colorado film was really good.
Yeah.
But keep going.
Well, he's a tackle who probably going to move inside like the last few North Dakota State guys, right? Cody Mock and Dylan Radens, 6'6", 318, but shorter arms. He was a center in high school, so I think that we talked about the center class not being great. He might actually be the best center in this class. You see the athleticism, the flexibility. He's strong with his hands. Both of his parents were college athletes. And this guy cares about family, football, and farming. So it's like, all right, you kind of know what kind of guy you're getting here.
Packer.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's him and Tucker Kraft.
The green and yellow looks good on him. Yeah.
Right. No, I really liked him. I had him at 39 overall. Wrote him up. I said, doesn't have ideal bulk, but he's a good athlete and he has a calm play style, stays balanced, but he has strong hands, wins rep after rep, clean technique. And I just said, experience at multiple spots, sign me up. Even if he doesn't have idea, because I thought he was a good mover. Usually think, oh, left tackle North Dakota State, you're going to be like a try-hard guy. But no, I thought he was a pretty good athlete. So good shout out
he's
there.
That too. The coaches just rave about. I mean, the coaches think he's like a first-round guy, and I mean, he's probably more of a second-round guy. But still, it's they talk him up quite a bit.
A winning player. That's what he screams to me. We'll end up with a couple more superlatives. Who's a player that you regret leaving off of your top 50? We've talked about a couple, but who are one or two or three that you're like, I wish I got him in here?
Every year I fall for an undersized nickel corner. Their speed, their play style. Last year is Drew Phillips for me. One of my favorite players in the class.
Looking decent.
This year is Drew. I'm planting my flag on Jacob Parrish, Kansas State corner. Yeah. Undersized, 5'10", $185. The reaction quickness, the speed, the way he's wired, sign me up. All right. I mean, he's one of my favorite players in the draft. I don't, maybe he won't go top 50, but I as soon as I hit send, I was like, I should have. I ended up putting the Alabama linebacker Campbell. After watching that LSU tape, what he did against the Tigers, I was like, all right, Campbell's got to make my top 50. He's in there.
That's what he did for me too.
Yeah, exactly.
it was even before that. It was yeah.
Oh, no, yeah. He's been playing. I mean, if you're leading Alabama in tackles for loss, sacks, forced fumbles, you're doing something right. You have my attention. But Jacob Parrish, man, he's one of my favorite players in this class. Again, undersized nickel. Watch the Colorado film and see him, play sticky coverage with Travis Hunter. He's a fun player that I think is wired the right way and has the requisite athleticism to play like a Drew Phillips and that type of guy.
I love that. It makes total sense. You love your old school Mike linebackers that can't cover. And then you like, I like my big stiff ball winning receivers. So, and you like slot, you like feisty slot guys. So this makes all the sense. Travis Hunter, by the way, is your number one player on your big board. I should mention that. We talked about a lot on this big board, but not your number one player. I think anyone that knows anything about football understands that one. He was number 2 on mine. I gave Will Johnson from Michigan the bump because I just can't quit him. And even though he's hurt, I think he's good. But he was number 2. So I have maybe on your big board. So we had the same top 2. You had Abdul Carter 3. I had Abdul Carter 4. I had Michael Williams 3, and you had him 9, I believe.
8, maybe. Yeah, one of those. But
let me see.
You might end up being right.
8.
Yeah, you might end up being right on him because really after Travis Hunter, between 2 and like 10. I was like, I keep reshuffling these and like, I don't know. It's kind of tough.
Mason Graham had about 7 rankings at first for me. I moved him all over my board.
he might be the safest player in this draft. Like, you just know what you're getting with him, but he's not like Quinnen Williams in terms of being that type of guy. Yeah, exactly. So, Mason Graham belongs in the top 10, but if you have him 3 or 8, I get it. Like Jalen Walker from Georgia, who's a linebacker, but maybe best as an edge rusher, or like, he's somewhere in there. Williams, you watch that Texas tape and you see it. You see, okay, this is a top 10 guy, easy. I cannot wait till we get an official verified arm length on him. I mean, he's ridiculous with the way he moves and have that length. But then you watch him against LSU and it's like, where'd you go? Or not LSU. Who did Georgia play this past weekend? But whoever it was, he comes and goes. It's not as consistent production from Mikael Williams as you want to see. And that's like, okay, if I'm drafting you top 5, I want to see more out of you. But the traits are there. I mean, he could end up being the best player in this draft. It would not be surprising if that happened.
There's a little bit of, I don't know, this might be a bad comparison, like Holden Smith, but Holden Smith was more productive. I don't know. There's just the length and everything, and maybe some of the build. Like Olden Smith got bigger, so maybe that's why I'm picturing it. So yeah, I'll admit I was not grinding 2010 Mizzou film, but it's just I remember him as a pro though. We were getting all those sacks, and then we're running off the field and sitting on the bench after you get those sacks. Remember that. We'll go with the last thing here. Favorite player to watch on your big board. Doesn't matter what the ranking was. Who was your favorite player that you're like, this just brings me joy?
We talked about a few of them. Michael Green's in there. Mason Graham, Derek Harmon. Those guys are in there. One guy that we haven't talked about really, Malachi Starks, Georgia safety. It just because he does it he does everything. He does it all. He's so valuable because you don't have to play him in a specific spot and then adjust your defense around him. You are able to just let him play all these different spots, whether it's man-to-man over the slot. He can play post, single high. Let him be a creeper or an overhang. Let him make plays close to the line of scrimmage. There just isn't much fat to his game. It's just the football IQ is what stands out to the most to me, and just the way he processes everything and sees the game. But he's also a really, really good athlete. He is a state champion long jumper in high school, 10.5, 100-meter guy. You see the speed on film. You see the fluidity with the way he moves. It's so refreshing to have a safety as a draft prospect that belongs in the top 10 and has a chance to be a pretty special NFL player.
No, especially how defenses use these guys now, doing it all is just huge. I mean, watching him last year when he was guarding Luther Burden in the slot and locking him down, I was just stuff like that. So that's a great shout.
I bumped him a little bit lower, but human, like one of the best guys in this draft, and so it's just check all the boxes for Malachi Starks. Get him on your team. That's what it seems like. There's just those guys. They're not perfect, but you kind of just like them. It's just we haven't seen a top 10 good safety since, is it with Jamal Adams maybe? Because Kyle Hamilton fell out of the top 10.
He was 14, I believe.
So it's it's kind of like running back, where some teams are they're not interested in drafting the position that early. But this is the type of guy that it doesn't matter. You take top 10.
The combination of traits and play style. It's that's different than that's the thing. Is so many safeties. Shoot, look at our safety rankings from last year. It was just there's 10 guys you could take here, and and they all went from late second to fourth, and it's totally get it. So
my number 2 safety went in the fourth. Jaden Hicks went to the 4th round of the Chiefs. I mean, geez, it's
my number 1 went in the 4th round to the 49ers. Malik Mustafa. So
that's right.
I know.
And he was my number 4. I mean, he was high for me too. Yeah. And he's played pretty well though. I mean, it made sense that he went there. It's they like the headhunters at safety. So that made total sense. Dane, I had about 40 more questions for you, but I think an hour and 10 minutes is a lot. I know how busy you are, and I really appreciate you taking the time. This was a lot of fun for me. I hope it was fun for you because I enjoyed it. You're just a bevy of knowledge. It's a fountain of knowledge. Anything you want to throw out there. So I really, really appreciate it, Dane. Make sure you check out his updated big board over on The Athletic, and the Beast coming in 6 months. But Dane will be in your ears a lot over the next few months talking about these big boards and mock drafts and everything. But where else can they find you, Dane? What else are you working on? I think in the next few weeks, I should say. First mock draft to come out at some point before Christmas. So dreading that, but no, hey, pleasure was all mine. I appreciate it. It's always fun to talk football with you, and we got to do this again.
Absolutely. No, we'll do that pre. What do they call it? There's always a post bowl game stuff. We'll do that. Yeah. We'll get back together right before All-Star game starts. So hopefully I can book you then, because you're going to be in Mobile. You'll be all over the place. Yeah. Picking your kids up from the bus stop. You got a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. That's right.
No, but thank you again, Dane. Thanks to Charles earlier for doing a little breakdown of Week 11. Matt Harmon and I will be back. Matt Harmon and I will be back on Tuesday. I thought it was Thanksgiving next week for some reason. Also, we did not get to a mailbag question this time, but make sure you send those in. We will, because it was an hour and a half show. I'm so sorry. But mailbag questions, send them in to football301mailbag at yahoosports.com. Subscribe to us, follow us, rate us, watch us on YouTube on the Yahoo Sports YouTube channel. Thanks to Brett Stone behind the scenes for editing this XXXL Irishman length podcast that we've dropped in here on a Thursday. Thank you all for listening. Have a great weekend. See you guys next time.